Martina Evans, and the Deputy Political Editor of The Sun, Ryan Sabey. Guys, thanks very much for being with us on your Sunday morning. We do appreciate it.
You've got 2 for the price of 1 now.
I know.
Yes.
It's quite nice, isn't it?
You like this?
It's a crowded table.
It is
Yeah,
crowded.
You know, exactly.
We'll
More the merrier.
work. We'll make it work, exactly. All right, let's start with The Express then, why don't we? Everyone, of course, remarking Remembrance Sunday today.
Remembrance Sunday, yeah, and a lot of Prime Ministers will be gathering today at the Cenotaph. We were actually just talking before we came on about the number of Prime Ministers that will now be there, because this must be the largest cohort of Prime Ministers that will assemble, you know, especially because of the sort of quick succession we had with the last Conservative government of Conservative leaders. But this story in The Express is about... veterans and people who worked during the war will now have free trips for life over to Normandy. So they'll be able to go and celebrate, or commemorate, I should say, the incredible day that was... How many years ago is it now? Gosh, I can't...
Well, it's 80 years ago since the end of World War II.
Right, there you go. So they'll be able to, for the rest of their life, and they've got this wonderful picture of Dorothea Barron, who is 101, and she still travels over to commemorate the...
I think this is a really good move, because I've been over for the 60th, 65th anniversaries, and going over with veterans, they had to fundraise, you know, all year round just to, you know, get on a bus and spend, you know, 3 or 4 days there and pay for hotels. But the fact the Ministry of Defence have actually stepped in, you know, for people actually going over there, they're gonna stump up the cash. I think this is, you know, a great move, especially as many of them are, you know, coming to the end of their lives.
Yeah, and I think there are going to be 20 veterans at today's service at the Cenotaph, and given that it is 80 years on, as you say, they are very old now, and so anything that makes their travel easier, I'm sure everyone would welcome.
But also, you know, you've got many groups who've been doing this, as you said, for a number of years. You know, you look at the Black Cabbies, they've always picked people up from stations and driven them in for free. You know, they're always working towards the Poppy appeal. So, yeah, it's nice that the government are now stamping up a bit of cash as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll have lots of discussion of Remembrance Sunday
we will.
all day. But let's move on now to the Sunday Telegraph, shall we, Ryan? Because their main story focuses on the BBC. And this is a story that they first reported on earlier in the week, and a memo that they had uncovered.
Yeah, this is what I think in newspaper terms we call a bombshell memo that came to light earlier in the week. And it's all around a panorama programme and the editing of a Donald Trump speech. So much so that the White House was so angered by this that they've actually had their press secretary and deputy press secretary intervene in this row over the last 24 hours or so. But it seems tomorrow that the BBC chair, Samir Shah, will actually apologise for the sort of what's happened to editorial standards at the BBC in this particular case. And I think one of the key things to come out of this piece in the Sunday Telegraph and the other papers is the role of Tim Davie and, you know, did he sit on this report? You know, has he kept silent on it? Someone's, you know, one report says that has he gone into hiding over this as well? So it really raises questions about, you know, the Director General and the leadership. But I think the fact that the White House got involved, it's not so much an issue for the BBC. It's it's a big UK issue as well.
It's extraordinary as well. You mean you're counting Prime Minister at the Cenotaph today. Let's count the apologies from the BBC about doing something wrong that they've had to then decide that they're going to say sorry about. And this one will be difficult for them because this is Panorama. That's produced in-house, as far as I'm aware. Like, the editorial standards go all the way through, and they should be on top of this sort of thing.
Well, sure. And, you know, Boris Johnson's on the front of the Mail on Sunday. He's written for them today, lambasting Tim Davie. I think it's a bit of a moral panic. They were 2 clips that were spliced together. I would say it was an editorialising of the Donald Trump speech in which he did call for people to march onto Capitol Hill, and he did call for people to go down and fight. It was the 2 clips that were spliced together were 54 minutes apart, but it was part of a package. It was part of a montage. And with the Panorama, it's not meant to be straight news. It is meant to be an editorial documentary piece. And I'm rather surprised at the Telegraph, because as journalists, we know we go to many press conferences. You do pick the most interesting points out of that speech using your judgment, and you will normally write up an editorial that just focuses on the most interesting bits. That's really what Panorama have done here, and actually I do think the BBC should hold fast.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so, and I think one of the key things is Nick Robinson, the BBC Today host.
Who's picked out in the headline.
Oh yeah. He's actually got involved in this, and the thing he's trying to say is there's a campaign to destroy the BBC, but also at the same time there's concern about editorial standards
Yeah,
of
he's
the
making
BBC.
both points, isn't he?
Both
His
things can
tweet
happen.
actually
They can
says
be at the
in the
same
same
time,
sentence,
yeah.
there are concerns, but at the same time, he thinks there is a plot, and that's something that the Mail on Sunday is picking him up on, that element of it there.
A couple of minutes left. Let's move on to... we're going back to the front of the Telegraph, but of course it's probably in all the newspapers at some point, speculation about the budget and how this black hole, 30-40 billion, is going to be filled. What's this reporting here?
Yeah, there's a lot of money that Rachel Reeves needs to find. As you say, the black hole are up to £40 billion, and also she wants to increase this financial buffer. It's currently wafer thin at £10 billion, so she wants to increase this. Now, one way that she's going to do this, instead of trying to find lots of little pots of money, she's going to go for the full hog and just do. One of the things is income tax to raise money. But the trouble is, it's lots of Labour MPs, backbenchers, will be kicking off over this. And the key thing about this is why they're going to be kicking off. There's a steadfast pledge in their manifesto that they were not going to raise income tax, VAT, or national insurance. And then you had the deputy leader of the Labour Party earlier in this week saying, if you break your manifesto, it comes down to trust. And this is why lots of MPs are saying, well, if you do break it, Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer, how can they stand at the next election, lead the parties?
Ava, I mean, this is such a difficult situation, though, Ava, because what else can she do to fill that black hole?
Well, she could be more creative with her taxation, which is what
Think
a
about
number
wealth
of
taxes.
absolutely a number of soft left MPs. So the group at the centre of the story, I imagine, is probably the newly formed Tribune Group, which will have Louise Haigh, who is the former Transport Secretary, heading that up. And what they'll be arguing is actually, if you tax the top 1%, you won't have to go for the quote-unquote working people. And it's interesting that the definition of a working person, according to this reporting, is someone who earns more than £50,000. Now, if you are a single-person household earning £50,000 and living in a major city in the United Kingdom, I think they'll tell you that is actually not enough to be considered a wealthy person.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be talking about this most days, I think, in the run-up to the budget. We're out of time for now. We'll have your second delve into the Sunday papers in the next hour.
Yes, stay with us.
There's always more to the news.